Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Hardwood Speaks podcast, where the game is always going to speak for itself. Playoffs are here. Playoffs are among us. I'm so excited. This is going to be such a good episode. I'm going to go over all the playoff matchups, the first ever play-in tournament, and a missed opportunity, honestly. A missed opportunity of what we could have seen. However, we got teams that all deserve to be in the playoffs. So I'm excited to go over it. This is the first ever bubble playoff. I think we're all excited now that we're going to be getting quadruple headers every day. So I think it's just right to get right into it, all right? So I'm going to first go over the missed opportunities, and that is of the Phoenix Suns and the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio Spurs not really a missed opportunity considering they might not be appealing to the media's eye in terms of how they play. However, 22 years of being in the playoffs straight. That is absolutely magnificent. To me, that is one of the greatest accomplishments in sports history. So that's just something to applaud. It's something to acknowledge. Greg Popovich is the greatest coach of all time. I think the Spurs in R.C. Buford and everyone they got there and how consistent they've been, I believe that they are the most consistent. They are the most consistent franchise in American sports. And that's just my opinion. I don't think the Kawhi thing really has anything to do with that. I think that was really an anomaly. And to me, we've seen consistency when they had David Robinson to Tim Duncan and Manu and Tony Parker to when they had Kawhi and LaMarcus Aldridge. And it was just amazing to see. It's going to be weird to see the Spurs not in here, of course, after over 2 decades of seeing them in the playoffs. But all good things must come to an end, and this was certainly one of the great ones. So, and then a missed opportunity that is appealing to the media eye is the Phoenix Suns missing out after going 8-0. So impressive. But I feel I'm more excited that we will see them be competitive next year in the playoffs. That is the expectation. They're not going to be sleeping on anybody anymore. They're going to be well prepared for. I think that this Phoenix team is as talented and balanced in terms of young talent and experience. I think that this is a team to look out for in the West next year. But I think Memphis did deserve that final spot because Memphis was better all year, whereas the Suns were impressive in a very recent sample size. So I think that Memphis did deserve it, but I'm very much looking forward to Phoenix next year, and especially Monty Williams. He did such a great job. He's definitely, to me, he should be the coach of the year, coach of the bubble. So that was just what a great story, Cinderella story. Another all good things must come to an end, but it's something to look forward to for next year. So next team we got, now we're going to go over the play-in. It's going to be exciting. Saturday, maybe Sunday, and we might be getting playoff games Saturday every day now, from Saturday on. So, yeah, let's get right into it. So, Portland and Memphis. That is the play-in tournament. Portland is the 8th seed. Memphis is the 9th seed. So, that means Portland needs to win just once, and Memphis needs to win twice. So, the first game is Saturday. If Memphis wins, they play Sunday. But if Portland wins, it's over. Portland will face the Lakers on Tuesday in Game 1. So, my prediction, I'm going to go with the experience, the talent, the star power of Portland. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. not being out for Memphis is pretty big. It takes away some size that they could have matched. But now with Nurkic and Whiteside and Zach Collins being really big guys up front and the star power of Dame and CJ and the experience of Melo, I think it's just they check all the boxes in this matchup. And even if they lose on Saturday, I believe, or today, they lose today to Memphis, I think that they have the experience and the coaching to make the necessary adjustments going into Sunday. So I got Portland winning. I think they'll win today. I think that they got everything. They check all the boxes. And, I think they will be playing the Lakers. So, and now we're going to get into the playoff matchups. Not the playoff matchups, all right? I'm going to go to the East, And I'll come back to the West because I feel like the West is a good way to end it because it's saving the best for last. So, first matchup we got is Milwaukee Bucks and Orlando Magic. And that, to me, is by far the most lopsided series of the playoffs. I think that Milwaukee has too much size. They got too much defense. They got too much star power. They got too much experience now. They got a little bit too much of everything for the Magic to even be competitive. I got the Bucks in a pretty sizable sweep. So it's just not much to talk about there. I think that's a consensus, to be honest, coming from a Magic fan too. So next series we'll go over is the Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers. The one of these two teams would play either the Milwaukee Bucks or the Orlando Magic. And I think this series will go the distance. I think we'll go 7. I think Indiana having the experience in Sabonis, Miles Turner. These guys, Miles Turner has been in the playoffs now every year since 2016. I think Oladipo being there, Malcolm Brogdon playing for Milwaukee, TJ McConnell, who's played for Philadelphia. They've had guys who've been in very competitive playoff matchups, playoff implication teams. And I think that's going to be very valuable for Indiana, especially because I think that typically, if you're an experienced team, you could have success in the playoffs. But and that goes in contrary to Miami, who has Bam Adebayo in his first playoff as a starting center. You got Kendrick Nunn, playoff debut. Tyler Hero, playoff debut. Duncan Robinson, playoff debut. You got a lot of guys making a playoff debut. Again, their only experience in Miami, it comes from Jimmy Butler, Myers Leonard, Kelly Olynyk, and Goran Dragic. So I think that will, but they have the talent. I think that Miami is more talented than Indiana. So I feel like that's why they would go 7. However, and the reason why I think Miami could win or will win is because they got the best player in the series in Jimmy Butler. And I think if you're in a Game 7 scenario, I think having the best player in the series is very valuable, and it could prove to be the advantage that you need to win the series. And I think that will prove correct to Miami. I think they will win the series. I got them winning in 7. I think it will go the distance. It's going to be interesting with Jimmy Butler versus TJ Warren. I think we're all going to love to see that. But I got Miami in 7. So, and I'll set up for a very interesting Bucks and Miami matchup. So, looking forward to that. Next year we'll go over is the Celtics and the Sixers. To me, I don't see this without Ben Simmons. I don't see this being a very competitive series in Celtics' favor. However, Joel Embiid, listen, there is not one guy that can guard Joel Embiid one-on-one. There is not. Let alone on the Celtics, who their starting center is 6'8". Okay? This is a series where Joel Embiid should be almost easily averaging 30 and 15. I saw what Stephen A. Smith said, and I'm kind of echoing it right now. He needs to be averaging some monster dominant numbers because this is a legacy series. It's okay if you're injured, and it's if he's injured or not. Because if he's injured, then it plays into what we've always been saying about him, which is that he's a very injury-prone, dominant player. But he is not shown to be dominant. He was dominant in the first 2 or 3 games in the bubble, but then was just shooting all these jumpers. It's annoying for us to see him shooting all these jumpers. So we got to look at this series. We want to be able to say, yo, Philly lost, but they did not lose because of Joel Embiid. We cannot say that it was Joel Embiid's fault or that Joel Embiid did not play to the point where we could say Joel Embiid carried or something like that. Like we need to be able to say that. We need to be able to say that Joel Embiid was able to play to the par that we expect him to. Because if he doesn't, I think that will hinder his legacy very much so. I believe that Nikola Jokic is the best center in the league, and I think he's proven that because Nikola Jokic in contrary to Joel Embiid, is much more consistent on a nightly basis. Whereas Joel Embiid, you could get solid effort in one game, but then he could be shooting 10 jumpers and not jogging back on defense in another game. So I got Celtics in 5, but if Joel Embiid is dominating, I'll say Celtics in 6 because I think that'll be enough to steal 2 games. All right. And then to the other lopsided series, the Raptors and the Nets. Not much to talk about here. However, I do think that the Nets, being as scrappy as they have been, and with the Raptors seeming to always have kind of an off game in each playoff series that they've ever played, I would say that the Nets can steal a game. I don't think it would be easy, and I don't think it would be very pretty for the Nets to get that win. But I think that seeing how the Raptors have been before Kawhi, how they kind of had a bad game in each playoff series, and even last year when they had Kawhi, they had a bad game in the first game. They didn't have that great they had a subpar game in the first game against the Magic. They had bad games 3 and 6 against Philadelphia, and bad games 1 and 2 versus Milwaukee. So, in the Eastern Conference, they could have a subpar game where Brooklyn can sneak in and steal a game. So I got Raptors in 5. Now we'll move over to the West. We'll move over to the Western Conference, and we'll start off at the top. Lakers versus the Grizzlies. I'll start off with that in case it happens. Lakers and Grizzlies, I got a sweep. I got a sweep from the Lakers. Too much star power, too much experience. That's all that needs to be said. Now, Lakers and Blazers. I got Lakers in 6. And I think that is because I think that could go 6 games because I think the lack of perimeter defense, losing Bradley, I think that's going to be tough for the Lakers to contain Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. So I think that'll be enough to steal 2 games. As well as Melo being consistent. Gary Trent has been absolutely amazing off the Portland bench. And the size, they had the size to match the Lakers with Nurkic, Whiteside, and Zach Collins versus an AD, Dwight, and JaVale McGee. But I think that the Lakers at some point in the series will begin to use their defense to get their offense to click in the half court. I think they'll use their defense to fuel their offense, and I think they'll be able to get them the series win because I think that the Lakers are a team that they definitely could flip a switch. We always have these concerns about a LeBron team going into the playoffs if they're struggling, and then he just turns it on. So I'm not worried about the Lakers in terms of winning the playoff series, but I do think that the Blazers could come in and look dangerous and give the Lakers a sense of urgency to turn their defense on to get their offense going through their defense. So I got Lakers in 6. So then I'm going to go now to the matchup where it is easily the most storyline, most NBA Twitter. It's a gift to NBA Twitter. The Thunder and the Rockets. You got CP3 versus his former team. You got the Russell Westbrook versus his former team. I think this is just an amazing playoff series. I think it will go the distance. I think Westbrook being out the first 2 games will make it more competitive than it possibly could have been. But I think the Rockets will split the first 2 or 3 games that they play, whatever. But I think that having James Harden being the best player in the series will prove again another series where I think that'll be very essential, and the deciding factor, the X factor, as I would say, for the Houston Rockets. I believe that they would use James Harden, and I think they'll be able to get the series win in 7. I think the Thunder will take it the distance because they got the experience in Chris Paul, Steven Adams, Gallinari, and all those, Dennis Schroeder. And they have the young guys as well in Shea and Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think they have the personnel. They have one of the better three-point defenses in the league. And I think that they will be able to be consistent. Because I remember a couple years ago in 2018 when Utah and Houston played, Utah had the best defense, three-point defense in the league. And the Rockets killed them in 5. And the reason why I think this one will go 7 is because the Thunder have more, they got more offensive power. with Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder, Gallinari, Shea. I think they got more offensive weapons to use in the half court. So I got Rockets in 7, but be aware this Thunder team could shock people. So I'm very excited. Now to the matchup that I'm most intrigued with, the Utah Jazz versus the Denver Nuggets. I think it's intriguing to me because you got a defensive-minded team versus an offensive-minded team, Utah versus Denver. But I think the key for Utah and the kind of the worry for the concern for Utah is where you're going to get your offense outside of Donovan Mitchell, because they have been able to get wins off of their defense, but outside of Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley, where they're going to get their offense. Whereas in Denver, I feel like they have more safety nets than Utah, meaning this. Jamal Murray, they need to have him on in order to win. It's a duo with him and Jokic. I think he's essential for them to win. However, now they have more safety nets offensively with Michael Porter Jr. coming into his own. When Will Barton comes back, Gary Harris comes back, they got more. They have more of a cushion offensively now than they did last year when Jamal Murray was off in Game 7 against the Blazers, and that proved to be fatal for Denver and their conference final hope. So I think that Denver has more safety, and also defensively, they got guys that can get a stop every now and then. And Jeremy Grant, Torrey Craig, Bol has a size. Gary Harris is a two-way. So I think they got guys that will be able to get the stops that they need to on offense. And I don't think Utah has offense outside of Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley to be able to match. Now, if they can use Gobert to the athletic advantage that he has over Jokic, maybe this series can go the distance. That's different, and I think it can. But I don't think it will for the reasons that I've articulated. So I got Denver in 6. So, and especially because Denver has the best player in the series as well. Another scenario of that. Denver has Nikola Jokic, which is, to me, by far the best player in the series. So, now to the last matchup. Last, but definitely not least, in terms of excitement, Dallas versus the Clippers. It's not going to be a competitive series in my estimation. I think it's going to be exciting to see Luka Doncic and Porzingis in their playoff debut. But I think the fact that they're such a good offensive team, but they fuel it off of their three-point shooting, and I think that will play into the strength of the Clippers, which is having Pat Bev, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. I think that the fact that Denver's strength or Dallas's strength plays into the strength of the Clippers to go along with all of their strengths. I think that will prove to be fatal for Dallas. So, and I don't think it'll be that competitive. They swept the season series 3-0, so they've shown that to be the case. And this is a Clipper team that's only a year removed without Paul George or Kawhi Leonard that took a Warrior team, fully loaded Warrior team, 6 games. So I think that this is a team that I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see both this matchup in general, to see Luka in the playoffs. But I think in terms of a matchup as a whole to Dallas, I think the Clippers have this one in the bag. I got them winning in 5. So to recap, we got the Bucks in 4. We got the Miami Heat winning in 7. So those two will meet in the second round. And then I got Celtics in 5 and Raptors in 5. So I think those two will meet in the second round. And then I got Lakers in 6 over the Blazers and 4 over the Grizzlies. And then Rockets over the Thunder in 7. So it'll be I believe we'll see a Lakers and Rockets in the second round. And then I think we will see a Denver win in 6 over the Jazz and a Clipper win in 5 over the Mavs. So that pretty much lays it out just like that. I'm not going to go over any plays right now because I feel like right now teams have been resting their stars, and we haven't really been able to get a good sample size of what schemes teams will use and what lineups teams will use in the playoffs, especially, going into the playoffs. They're going to be using much more top-heavy lineups in the lineups that they've been using before the hiatus, really. So I think that's the reason why I'm not going to really go over any plays right now. But come Tuesday, I'll probably have some stuff to dissect between the Blazers and the Grizzlies game. So, yeah, that pretty much does it for this episode. Thank you for watching. Excited for the playoffs. Enjoy this weekend, and I'll see you guys Tuesday, where the game is always going to speak for itself.